You might want to read this. It's going to make more sense here as I explain. Let me give you the story on Jim Rogers. Some of you probably already know. So whenever you hear Jim Rogers, and fortunately, Jim Rogers, this con man, he's got one leg in the grave. I think he'll be done soon. And of course, the media's already got their new guys, right? As these guys pass away, they've got their new guys, right? Jim Rogers has been one of these guys media's gone to for a number of years. They created this legendary status. And the whole claim is Jim Rogers made a fortune with George Soros and the Quantum Fund in the 70s or something like that. And he retired. First and foremost, number one, George Soros is Mr. Insider Trading. Okay? Because, he's connected. You understand? He's connected. That's how a lot of these guys operate with their little mafia. You understand what I'm talking about? Their network. They know guys in high positions in high places. So they have information. Why do you think George Soros, by the way, makes his money through things that aren't really that predictable, more gambling, like currency speculation? Well, who do you think controls how these currencies move? These are governments, right? You understand what I'm saying? Aside from all that, his involvement in insider trading, so forth, I want to know what Jim Rogers did. I want to know what value Jim Rogers added. Okay, and how much money he made. Okay, that's the first point. Aside from all that, none of that really even matters. You know why? That was 50 fucking years ago. I want to know what Jim Rogers has done lately, because the whole narrative is that Jim Rogers made all this money and he retired. He retired, traveled the world and did this and that. Oh, really? If he retired, why did he write 5 fucking books since that time? Of course, none of the books were written by him, all ghost written, and they were horseshit books, nonsense books. And why has he been lining up for decades for any fucking loser who wants to interview him? I've shown this. He's got a YouTube channel with 10 subscribers. He will do an interview with you. Okay? Every single day, Jim Rogers is lining up for interviews. That's not retired, folks. Jim Rogers is a media promotion guy. That's how he's making all his money. Not by investing. If Jim Rogers is really a great investor and made so much money, why the fuck is he lining up for every stooge? Because he's promoting a narrative. Fear-mongering narrative. The U.S. sucks. It's no good. Stay out of the stock market. I'm shorting U.S. treasuries. The dollar's going to collapse. Buy gold. Buy commodities. That's a narrative guy. Stay away from narrative people, folks. They're not analysts. They're fucking pitchmen. They're scammers. So how does that make Jim Rogers money? Because Jim Rogers serves as a whore at these paid events that feature gold pumpers, hard assets, all this bullshit. He's even lined up for cryptocurrency. Jim Rogers will speak and tell you what you want to hear if you're going to pay him. He gets on the boards of shady-ass companies, mainly from Canada and Russia and China. Many of those companies are scammy companies that blow up, that are engaged in fraud. You understand? He sells his name that's been created by the media to make money. That's how Jim Rogers is making his money. He also had a series of commodities ETFs he licensed his name to, which all blew up, by the way. That's the truth about Jim Rogers. Nobody else seems to know. I guess you all know it now. I've exposed this for years. So you can read this here. Read it carefully. Jim Rogers is promoting Singapore, right? That's part of his narrative. Escape America. China is where the next place is going to be. But guess what? That's his whole storyline. And the reality is that Jim Rogers got shamed and disgraced in America several years ago. He was kind of forced to leave America after insulting and berating a student. Jim Rogers was teaching a course. I don't know why they let this idiot teach, but I guess anybody in business school with an MBA, you got an MBA, you can teach business courses because business school is a fucking joke. And you can go and check into it. It created a big scandal, how he just completely humiliated this student for no reason because he's an arrogant prick. And that was the beginning of the end of Jim Rogers in America. He had to leave after that. Nobody was going to give him any media exposure, at least for a while. So he goes to Asia, tells Asia, yeah, I'm here because this is going to be the next great place of the century. So he gets all the interviews in Asia. All the stuff dies down in America. He gets back on American media. First of all, his whole story, his little China book, he tells you how China's going to be great. Yet it's so great that Jim Rogers decides he can't live there because it's so polluted. How can you praise a country and tell everyone how great it's going to be, and it's so polluted he won't live there? So what does he do? He moves to Singapore, which is not China. Tells you how great Singapore is. And you can read here what happened. Jim Rogers starts complaining and he regrets moving to Singapore, talking about how bad the education system is there. Okay? Does the media bother to mention these things? No. Jim Rogers is a hypocrite, a con man, and a fraud. His whole pitch, you understand, his whole pitch based upon trashing everything in America, the stock market. If you listen to Jim Rogers, you missed out on 500% gains in the stock market over the past 15 years. Okay? His whole pitch is America's so bad, China's where you got to be. Yet he won't live in China. It's too polluted for him. So he goes to Singapore. Singapore is great, he says. He loves it there. And then the reality hits when you can see this bottom article here. He actually insults this lady. This lady's saying, look, I think Singapore's a good place. And Jim Rogers is trashing it. What does he say to the lady? If you think Singapore's so good, go back to Singapore. Can you believe this piece of fucking trash? Here's a man who's trashed the U.S. for years in order to make money, steering people into the fucking gutter, selling them down the road to ruins. He happens to be in America giving a talk. A Singaporean lady stands up to defend her country after he trashes it, the same country he lives in, and he tells the lady to go back to Singapore. Can you believe this guy? Piece of fucking trash. That's not all. There's more. Not to mention his terrible track record, which I'm going to show you here. Yeah. So this is his little book, A Bull in China. And this is what people talk about. Oh, you told us about how China's going to be great. Well, take a look when the book came out. Folks, if you're a dipshit, I'm going to teach you the secret to making a lot of money. Follow one of these contrarian indicators and do the opposite of what they say. Jim Rogers, Peter Schiff, Harry Dent, so on and so forth. Take a look. As you can see for yourself, this is when his book came out. A Bull in China. And China collapses. FXI. FXI is a Chinese ETF, 8 shares, large cap. That's the only way you're going to be able to invest in China at that time for sure. Right? These are the 50 largest cap stocks from China, listed in Hong Kong, 8 shares. Take a look at that. Fucking collapse. So you listen to Jim Rogers? Okay. Timing is everything, folks, especially when you're dealing with the emerging markets. I've talked about that before. Timing is everything. The emerging markets in general, you don't want to buy and hold emerging markets. Now, there are periods when a fairly long buy and hold can work for some emerging market countries, depending upon the macro policy that's ongoing. For instance, China entering the World Trade Organization in 2001. China did very well for several years, but after the financial crisis, they haven't been doing so great, right? Completely different period, as I have forecast and discussed numerous times in detail in my research. right? And you can find examples with other countries, but just generally speaking, and there's always going to be some exceptions depending upon the situation, how new the market is, so on and so forth. Generally speaking, and one of those exceptions, by the way, I'm not going to say will continue to be forever, but certainly one of those exceptions has been India, and that's really the only emerging market investment in terms of the country that I have been recommending for several years, as my research subscribers know. And of course, I nailed the next big emerging market economy many, many years before anybody had a fucking clue. Okay? Been investing in India and recommending it for more than about 15 years. Okay? So this proves to you right here, just look at this chart. Generally speaking, buy and hold in emerging markets is not a good thing to do. Now, it can be a little bit better if you are a citizen of those countries, because you're going to have better access to those markets, direct access, right, to the actual market indexes. It can be a little bit different, right? But that implies that you're willing to accept the risk of those markets, which are not exactly too credible, which is why Chinese citizens themselves don't even trust the Chinese stock market, by the way, generally speaking. That's fact. So the premise of this Jim Rogers legendary status and his whole narrative of, he moved to China, right? Take a look. Fucking disaster. He won't even live in China. It's so polluted. Does this sound rational to you that China's the next great place, the next great empire, right? He's been completely fucking wrong. Jim Rogers has been completely wrong. And it's not as if, okay, look, you come out several years ago and you make that claim. Okay, that's fine. Fair enough. But do you change it when the situation changes? No, you don't. Because you're not an analyst. You don't provide research. You're selling a narrative, a one-way broken clock narrative. Those people are dangerous. I was bullish on China in America's financial apocalypse, 2006. I became bearish on it, though, after that, right? You understand? Because I'm a real analyst. People are going to make money listening to me. The only people who are going to make money with Jim Rogers is Jim Rogers. Okay? Because he's a pitch man. Like all these guys promoted in the media, based upon a bunch of bullshit, exaggerated claims, false pretense, cherry picking. That's what the media does to promote all these so-called experts. All of them. Write it down. All of them. Because this is a nomad capitalist. Let's show you some videos here. Showed you the Patrick Boyle. Remember, folks, Patrick Boyle has officially become a business partner with Andrew Henderson, Nomad scam artist. I want you to contact university that he teaches part-time for and let him know that. Contact the business department. Ask them, do you think that this is representing university? Do you think a guy that's e-begging on YouTube, right? Somebody raise these points. So let's take a look before we get to Jim Rogers. Guess who else I found? And I have not looked through this entire list. I just was going through this to get all the old videos, so I didn't even look closely. But take a look. Everyone's favorite scam artist, Ty Lopez. That's right. I mean, folks, if you doubted me before, remember, birds of a feather always flock fucking together. Scammers hang with scammers.
When you think about passports in cities, why would you bet your whole life on one place? Governments don't.
You hear this? So I want you to listen to what this fraudster has to say.
When you think about passports in cities, why would you bet your whole life on one place? Governments don't care about you. I don't care. There is not one country in the world where governments care about you. So you never want to bet too much on one place where you're going to find this magical utopian government. What you want, in my opinion. Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. Fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills. But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things? knowledge. In fact, I'm a lot more.
So here's his, everything is fake, right? Even the garage is rented, Lamborghini's rented, not his books. This whole thing, as you might recall, is about telling you how if you got knowledge, read all these books. He reads a book a day, 2 books a day, whatever, complete lies. He gets all the knowledge. Subscribe to his book club. I'll tell you what, folks, how about instead of like falling for a guy who wants to tell you that knowledge and reading books is so great, how about listening to a world authority who's written fucking books and is going to tell you reading books ain't the fucking key. That's a bunch of bullshit. Okay? Especially these days when the vast majority of these books out there, nonfiction books, are a bunch of horseshit marketing nonsense. So did you hear what this guy had to say? Let's continue.
It's a relatively benign government. My libertarian side is like, look.
You hear that? His libertarian side. What did I tell you, folks, about libertarians? They're all one of 2 things. Write it the fuck down. Big Swing and Dick says so. Write it down. I challenge you to find an exception. They're one of 2 things. They're scammers. These are the guys, the libertarian guys, who understand what they're doing. Understand the libertarian movement. It's about scamming people, deceiving people. They're pitching individual liberty and freedom as a way to support corporate fascism, remove laws that help protect consumers and workers against corporate activities, right? Consumer Protection Agency, OSHA, so on and so forth. They want to get rid of that stuff. And these are the same guys also who advocate these so-called principles of libertarians. Why? Because libertarians don't believe in lawsuits. They don't believe in regulation. They believe everyone's responsible for their own actions. That means they basically saying, I can scam you and you can't go after me. That's what they believe. That's why they love it so much, because they're scammers themselves. That's one type. Right? That's one category of libertarians. The other category are the complete fucking sheep, the naive pigeons that fall for this shit, that don't really understand the true essence of what this movement stands for. Every single libertarian is going to fall into that category, right? One or 2 of the categories. They're going to be the exact scammers, or they're going to be the idiots that fall for them. You can write it down. Show me an example. So, who else? We've got George Gammon. Let's see, Ty Lopez. By the way, Mexico's new president. You might want to check out Mexico's new president. I think it's pretty interesting to understand what's going on with the control around the fucking world. Take a close look and you decide. Okay?
And they say
here we go. Patrick Dumb David. Patrick Dumb David. Look, he's got his PHP shirt on. Look at this. He's got his fucking scammy multi-level marketing PHP shirt. Folks, what have I been telling you guys? I should actually be doing a course. And of course, you hear about these guys with their little courses. They're not qualified. They're a bunch of scammers. I mean, I'm giving you guys like hundreds and hundreds of hours of live educational training on how to spot a scammer. I should make this a course, right?
Keys to success as a business owner. You've never ran a business. Your business is selling courses. And that's okay if you make money with that, because I still think there's value in giving inspiration to others.
So notice Patrick Bet David, by the way, he's talking about, he's trashing people that sell courses. But then he says, it's okay. He doesn't want to step on these guys' feet too much because he's dealing with these guys on ScamTube. But what Patrick Bet David doesn't want you to know is his scam is a little bit different. He's not selling courses. He's selling his mentorship, which is basically the same horse shit. And he's also selling his little conferences, which he charges up to $16,000 to attend. Right? You understand? There ain't no difference between courses and his fucking bullshit he's selling. His scammy mentorships, his scammy conferences. At the end of the day, you're dealing with people who are not credible, selling horse shit for which they're not qualified to sell, selling empty promises and countless dreams. They're conning people, you understand. That's what Patrick Bet David, I wanted to explain. I didn't see this before. It's just pretty obvious. I just caught it immediately.
Two keys to success as a business owner. You've never ran a business. Your business is selling courses.
Your business is selling multi-level marketing and deceiving people and feeding them with bullshit. Remember, this is the guy, Patrick Bet David, who is known, he's widely known, his company, take advantage of immigrants who don't speak English well, selling them this PHP dream, and the whole multi-level marketing horseshit. This is the guy, this is who we're talking about, Patrick Bet David. Uneducated thug, and he wants to tell you that college is a scam. This is one of the guys, anyone that tells you, folks, anyone that tells you that college is a scam, just flat out, just like that, they're either stupid or they're trying to swindle you. So in other words, if they're selling something based upon that premise that college is a scam, they're trying to swindle you. Patrick Bet David, just like Robert Kiyosaki, just like James Altucher, I've pointed out all three of these scammers in the past, and many others. They want to tell you that college is a scam because they want to remove from your life everything that you can become empowered, that can help empower you. Good education, right? They want to tell you the stock market's a scam, right? Grant Cardone. And now, of course, Grant Cardone has done a 180 because he's teamed up with the Nigerian knuckleheads. You see? They want to remove from your life things that can help you become successful, have a good income, a stable retirement. They want to tell you college is a scam. They want to tell you the stock market's a scam. They want to tell you that having a job is a scam. Why? Because they want to give you their solution, selling their horse shit to you. Andrew Henderson, Nomad, scam artist, does the same thing. Similar approach. Wants to tell you how bad the West is, how bad the U.S. is, and how great Colombia is, and how great Georgia is, and how great Thailand is, how great Singapore is. He doesn't tell you that you don't have any rights there. He doesn't tell you how dangerous it is in many of these countries, namely Latin America. Right? He wants to tell you he can help you invest there. He wants to tell you to buy real estate there. It reminds me of all these fucking travel vloggers who are given bad information, bad advice. I ran across one guy who's clearly building his repertoire of subscribers and selling this whole FIRE movement bullshit. I may profile him in the future. But I saw a video where he was pitching. He was telling people something that seemed benign, seemed helpful. He was telling people how to survive. And he admits, I've been a nomad. I've been doing this for 2 years. And he tells you, well, what do you do to escape taxes from the U.S.? Not Henderson, this one guy I'm not going to, who remains unnamed at this point. Maybe I'll feature him in the future. He tells you, well, you want to get an address that doesn't have state taxes. So if you're from a state that has state taxes, you want to change your address to a state like Texas. So you're not going to have to pay state taxes. Okay. Which sounds reasonable, right? That sounds like a good idea. Without mentioning this caveat. And that is what? Anybody have any idea what could be a problem with that? Anybody understand what might be a problem? I'll tell you what might be a problem. What is a problem, depending upon the state that you're talking about. If you relocate overseas, and folks, I can assure you, I know a lot more about all the stuff that Henderson talks about a lot more than he knows without even trying. Okay? Because of who I am and my experience living overseas. I know a billion times more. And not only that, but my information is accurate, credible. His information is not accurate or credible. I'm not selling a service, by the way. I could. In fact, I should appeal to anybody who's been swindled by this guy. Send me the evidence and I might help you for free. Right? Here's what you're not going to hear from anyone else in the world, guaranteed, until they steal this. That's why I don't want to talk a whole lot about what I know about things, because people steal the content and claim it as their own. You decide to live overseas. Okay, great. And you've decided to find another address in a different state that doesn't have state taxes. So you don't have to pay state taxes. Guess what? You're living overseas. Okay. Well, might there be some legal issues? Yes, there might. Let's say, for instance, and a lot of these people that are living overseas, they've decided to live overseas permanently. They're not these little digital fucking ding-dong douchebags that go to one of these countries, like Thailand. They're there for 3 days or a week or a month and make these videos that telling you what the greatest pad thai in all of Thailand. They don't know anything, but they're telling you where the things to go and what to do. The best things. They're experts. More YouTube fucking content fraud. To sell ads and their affiliate links. Scammers, basically. All of YouTube. You've got older guys that want to retire overseas somewhere. Okay? That's the typical. Those are the people who are typically going to stay overseas long periods of time, if not the rest of their lives. They've decided to change their mailing address to a state that doesn't charge or doesn't levy state taxes like Texas. Let's say they're from California. Guess what can happen? Well, that individual probably is going to want to create a will, or has already created a will or some type of estate plan. Guess what? Your residency is now in question, because now you qualify potentially for residency in the state of Texas. If you formed a will in the state of California, it's null and void. And when you die, everything's going to fucking probate. The will is null and void, and everyone's going to be fighting in probate court for years. That's just one example. Okay? If you don't believe me on that, try and find a legal, qualified, credible legal person, which means nobody on YouTube, no YouTube attorneys. Okay? What I'm telling you is fact. And how do I know this? I can tell you right now, there have been many issues that I have looked into. I can't find anyone in America, any legal person in America who has the answers. I've had to find out the answers on my own. Okay? And the reason why is because, in America, you've got people that practice law. They pass the bar exam in each state. And each state has different laws. And then you want to apply those state laws to overseas, right? You got to deal with jurisdiction, right? So when it comes to things like assets, wills, even medical directives, things like that, it's a whole different ballgame. You see? And then you say, okay, well, I'll just have a will written up by an attorney in the state of Texas. But then it becomes the issue of the state of Texas may say, well, what's your proof of residency? Just because you have a mailbox in Texas doesn't mean you're a resident. However, the people in California, your heirs, are going to say, if the ones that don't get what they want out of the will when you die, they're going to challenge that will and say, hey, he's proven he has Texas residency. So you can understand where you can get nowhere, right? You can claim that he's no longer a California resident, but you can also claim that he's not a Texas resident. So you're in the middle of nowhere. This is a very, very real possibility. I can assure you. You're not going to hear about this from anybody else in the world. And you know why? Because when I do shit, I do it right. I know what I'm fucking talking about. Okay? And it's going to, and I say this is, and I say maybe because it's going to vary depending upon the state, because each state has its own criteria to determine residency. But I can tell you one thing that's pretty certain for the most part, I would say, and that is the address where you send your bank statements. If you're sending your bank statements to another state, and let's say you want to claim your home state, your original state as residency, forget it. It's over. So if for some reason you want to claim California as your state of residency, but you're sending your bank statements to Texas in order to avoid paying California taxes, and then later on, for whatever reason, you want to claim California residency, it could be also it could be due to a marriage, right? Marriage, divorce proceedings, what have you. Or let's say for the purposes of a will, forget it. Forget it. If you're sending your bank statements to another state, you're no longer a resident of the other state. But sending a bank statement to Texas doesn't qualify you as a resident necessarily. You understand? So these little simple answers that people talk about online, they're full of shit. Don't listen to anybody who's not a fucking expert. The key thing there is understanding when someone's an expert, because everyone claims to be a fucking expert now. That's just one example, folks. That's one example. And I can guarantee you, this pinhead has never talked about that. Guaranteed. Because it's a fraud. Andrew Henderson. Okay?
And that's okay if you make money with that, because I still think there's value in giving inspiration to others. That's totally fine. I learned very early on, at 24 years old, I did not want to be a motivational speaker. I wanted to.
That's what you are, dude. You're trying to motivate people with your bullshit. Anyway, Patrick Bet David is associated with this guy. That tells you right there. Folks, what did I say? Birds of a feather always flock together. If you want to spot the army of con artists, identify one and see where that con man hangs around. You understand? It's quite simple. Over time, you're going to increase your knowledge of understanding this army of con artists, who they are. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more that you identify, the easier it's going to become to spot all of them. And there's many other ways to spot all these things that I've gone over in previous videos. And of course, you know, this guy, Henderson, also promotes the digital nomad scam. I exposed digital nomad as a scam. First person in the world to do so, maybe the only person. Did so more than 10 years ago. Complete fucking fraud. It's basically a pyramid scheme. I'm not going to get into that today. But anyone who identifies themselves as a digital nomad is either an idiot or a scammer. Similar to the whole libertarian thing. Either they don't know what the fuck's going on and they want to attach themselves to some type of a name, title, movement, or they're scamming people, selling the whole digital nomad dream. Basically what happens is that these digital ding-dongs realize that it doesn't fucking work. You can't just go and work remotely and live a dream paradise life. So what do? They start selling you courses and ebooks on becoming a digital nomad. Oh, I'm going to show you how to become a digital nomad. This kind of becomes a pyramid scheme. You see? Here we go. Jim Rogers.
But now the United States is the largest debtor nation in the
Here we
history
go.
of the world. In the history of the world,
Okay.
no nation has ever been as deeply in debt as we are, the U.S. is. There is no question that in the next few decades, especially, having a different option is very important.
Okay. In the next few decades, a few decades? First of all, Jim, where did you get your crystal ball? Jim's got a crystal ball, right? He's telling you not what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next year. Decades in the future, he knows, right? Folks, you know what? The further you go out in time, the less certain you are, right? The less certain anyone's going to be. Now, if Jim Rogers is right, which I can tell you he's not, but assuming he is, few decades? So he's talking, 30 years, 40 years and beyond? Who gives a fuck? I don't care about that. You see? Look, notice this little montage here. He's got Robert Kiyosaki. He's got a different montage of scammers. And of course, Robert Kiyosaki's part of his whole little pitch is, oh yeah, when I was in the Vietnam War, I was a helicopter pilot. I was in the Marines. It's all lies, all baseless lies, like everything that comes out of Kiyosaki's mouth. In fact, I'm going to give you guys a little treat here. Little treat unplanned. Got a little article here working on Kiyosaki. You can read it for yourself there. And let's make it a little bigger. It's going to be the mother of all exposés on Kiyosaki, probably. I've exposed this con man many times in the past, but lay it all out here. See, it's, as I say, it's in editing mode. Take a look. So we've got here 29 bullet points why Robert Kiyosaki is a fraud. Number one, he claims 401ks are a scam. I go through the explanation. I've got all these claims here. Take a look. See that? Just explaining. Number two, having a job is for losers, he says. Number three, college is a scam, Robert Kiyosaki says. I mean, anyone that believes anything out of this guy's mouth needs some severe neurological treatment.
You moved to Singapore. I've described this as sort of a legacy, not only for yourself, but a legacy for your children, that they'd be able to be multilingual. They would be able to have that optionality. Talk about using internationalization.
Remember, for those of you who didn't, who just came in, I've already shown you. So he's saying, oh, you moved to Singapore. Remember, Jim Rogers, his entire pitch was he wanted to move to China because that's going to be the next great place to be in the 21st century. He decided, though, he can't stand the pollution in China, so he moved to Singapore. Okay? He moved to Singapore, which, remember, Jim Rogers is one of these libertarian guys. He values freedom and liberty, but he lives in Singapore, which has been referred to as a police state, which I can see that. No doubt about it. Right? You got to walk the line in Singapore. They've got CCTVs all over the place, making sure you don't toss any chewing gum on the street, or you're going to be fined $2,000. Right? You got a very controlled system there. Right? I don't know how any libertarian would like Singapore, to be honest. But it gets better than that, because as I've shown you all in the beginning, Jim Rogers was telling you about how he loves Singapore, how it's great. And once again, Singapore is not a real country. It's a city-state. You all understand that, right? It's kind of you could think of it as a special economic zone in Malaysia. And, I guess legally, officially, it's called a country, but it's not. It's a little island, tiny little place, right? Tiny little place where they have no resources. They don't even have enough land to build accommodations for people. Okay? So, nonetheless, Jim Rogers wants to tell you that's a great place. Why? Well, because it falls into his whole narrative. He doesn't want to remind people that his great country of China he can't live in because it's too polluted. But then Jim Rogers comes out and criticizes the Singaporean educational system, which is thought of to be one of the best in Asia, right? He regrets sending his children to get a Singaporean education. That's what he said. Let's do a rundown of some of the scammers before we get back to Jim Rogers. Here we go. Take a look. Michael Saylor, everyone's favorite Bitcoin con man. You might remember Michael Saylor I exposed a couple of years ago. And, I mean, the guy I think he's kind of a lunatic, but he's certainly a con man. And notice this is 3 years ago. So you might want to notice, by the way, the changes in Andrew Henderson's background. So he went from his little kind of a cheap little studio thing, and now he's got the facade working, right? He's got because it's all a Hollywood production. You understand? His whole company is a Hollywood production. It's based upon smoke and mirrors. Like, he's some wealthy guy. He can show you how to get a different passport, all this stuff, and he's connected with all these rich people. Complete lie. He's here to defraud you with smoke and mirrors. Okay? Notice how he's changed. He's put a lot more money into his production to swindle people, to fool the dummies.
With one of its biggest proponents, and by biggest I mean over $1 billion. Michael Saylor is the founder and CEO of MicroStrategy. I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad.
Andrew Henderson, of course, was pumping Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor was pumping Bitcoin. I don't know. This looks like pretty close to the top here. 2021 January, sometime around then. But anyway, remember, folks, you are judged by the company you keep.
Those are values that
never let a person get a pass. If they are associating with another person, and that person is a scammer, a fraud. They're a scammer and a fraud. It's that simple. It's that simple. Okay? Michael Saylor, of course, was also charged with tax fraud and convicted of tax fraud. As I've mentioned before, I exposed that. Think about that for a second. That makes perfect sense. Why? These types of people, folks, these libertarian wackos, they feel that they can defraud people. They don't have to pay taxes. They'll move over to any country they want, right? These are the same people who advocate gold and cryptocurrencies. Why? Because gold and cryptocurrencies are instruments for money laundering. That's just known. Okay, so it's not surprising Michael Saylor cheated on his taxes because he's a cryptocurrency guy. Cryptocurrencies, I mean, they were talking about a criminal industry, right? I've talked about it before. Let's get back to Tai Lopez. I want to get back to this. Let's listen to what he had to say again. I want to mention something here.
When you think about passports in cities, why would you bet your whole life on one place? Governments don't care about you. I don't care. There is not one country in the world where governments care about you. So you never want to bet too much on one place where you're going to find this magical utopian government. What you want, in my opinion, is a relatively benign government. My libertarian side is like...
Yeah, your libertarian side. So think about this guy. This tells you about what this guy's all about. And by the way, Mr. Tai Lopez is related to Grant Cardone, who's related to Andrew Henderson, who's related to Peter Schiff, who's related to Harry Dent, who's related to Doug Casey, who's related to Jim Rickards, who's related to... Do I need to continue?
Some of the best countries that you could possibly invest in are the ones that you've either never heard of or the ones that you think are so toxic.
Invest
I would tell you why
in Colombia,
I would run
right?
towards
Pagoda.
those investments rather than away from them. I recently interviewed my friend George Gammon, who talks on YouTube.
George Gammon, you hear that? He recently interviewed his friend George Gammon. See that? Folks, what I've been saying, all these fucking hucksters, they hang together. They're all scammers. You got to wake up. You can buy my book. You're a scammer, dude. You're a fucking weasel, a piece of trash. These people make me fucking sick because they are exploiting people with disinformation, complete horseshit. Andrew Tate. He wants to tell you about Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate is one of the most talked about people in the world this year. And it's said that he has 7 passports, 15 driver's licenses from different countries, residence permits in 30 countries, and bank accounts all around the world. This is extreme diversification that we talk.
Because he's a fucking criminal. He's a criminal. That's what criminals do. That's what fucking crooks do. Got it? I've been exposing Jim Rogers for a number of years, the only person in the world who's done so. And this is the reality. Folks, this proves to you how the media works. All these experts they promote are full of shit. They're broken clocks and they're frauds. You can see here how Jim Rogers is telling you how China's going to be the great place to be. A bull in China. He's telling you how China's going to be the great place to be and buy commodities. The book comes out, China, as you can see by FXI, fucking collapses. Okay? And his whole pitch was basically, yeah, China's going to be the place to be for the 21st century. Yet, he doesn't want to move there. Remember, Jim Rogers basically had to leave the U.S. after his debacle, berating this business student. You can look into it many years ago, 25 years ago or so, maybe I think even more. Take a look. He decides to move to Singapore instead because the pollution in China, and this was like, what, 20 years ago? The pollution even back in China back then was so bad. And then you can read here, the lower segment, he's speaking in San Francisco, and he starts trashing Singapore. You can read for yourself. Okay? He starts trashing Singapore, and I quote, "Many people speak Mandarin, and I moved to Singapore because I can't speak Mandarin myself. I thought it was great that Singaporeans can speak both English and Mandarin. But just when I thought that my daughters could speak the standard language, I did not expect the Singaporeans sucks at both English and Chinese. The English standards in Singapore is just disappointing." He regrets basically living in Singapore because his children can't speak proper English, I suppose. That's what he's saying. And so he's trashing Singapore. Remember, this is the place he's telling you, he's telling you all the time, it's great. Come to China, Singapore, it's great. Get out of America. And now he's in San Francisco. He wants to cater to the people in San Francisco, to cater to people in America, you see. He's telling you how bad Singapore is. A lady stands up and says, hey, Singapore is a good place. And Jim Rogers responds, then you should go back. Can you believe this piece of fucking trash? This is a piece of shit human being. And a con man. He lives in Singapore. That's his legal residence. Jim Rogers has trashed America for years as a way to make a living conning people, pitching bullshit, anti-U.S. investments. He starts trashing Singapore, and a lady stands up from Singapore and says, hey, Singapore's a good place, defending her country. And Jim Rogers tells her to go back to Singapore. Nobody stands up and says, hey, Jim, why don't you get the fuck back to Singapore? What are you doing here? You've told us for so many years the U.S. is a disaster. What are you doing now? This proves what a piece of fucking trash, what a fraud this guy is. Complete fraud. Now, let's take a look at some of the images. I've got hundreds of images on Rogers alone showing his track record. You can read this for yourself, telling you how agriculture is Jim Rogers' top pick. He was picking agriculture, pitching it since 2011. Incidentally, that's when the commodities market peaked out, which I forecast, big collapse, right? Telling you to buy commodities, telling you to buy ag commodities. Take a look, what happened? This is not just a month or a year, many years. Take a look. Jim Rogers is pitching commodities. Take a look at the returns for commodities. Now he's pitching you can see this elements. This is a Rogers International Commodity Agriculture ETN. Take a look. You can see the track record here. October 2008, Jim Rogers, we are facing an inflation holocaust. I'm buying agricultural commodities. What happens to agricultural commodities after that? Complete fucking collapse. I mean, folks, look it up. You don't believe me? You don't trust me? Look it up on your own. Verify it for yourself. Farmers will be driving Lamborghinis while the stockbrokers are driving taxis. March 2014. Yeah, we see how that turned out. Didn't turn out too well for the farmers. That's for damn sure. Turned out pretty good for the stockbrokers. This is the DBC Commodities Index since 2008. And you can see after the financial crisis, let's go ahead here. He's really pitching commodities back in 2011. And you can see, let me go ahead and adjust this. I hate this new layout they've got. You can see what happened. Now, only recently, as you can imagine, a few years ago, we got this big inflation spike, right? But by that time, I'm pretty sure Rogers ETNs went out of business because everybody had already lost everything. It's too late. See, he pushes this whole narrative because he makes money off this stuff, you see? And then, of course, Rogers also telling you about how he's shorting. This is a TLT, Treasury bonds. He's telling you how he's shorting U.S. bonds. And if you go through, check this, it's the exact opposite happened. Yeah, here we go. So just go through and read this. Bets on the ruble, tells you to buy, invest in Russia, invest in the ruble, it collapses. Take a look. Investing in Russia, 2012. The ruble fucking collapses. Like, I don't know, 80% over the next year or two. Look it up. Here you go. Rogers tells Yahoo he's been in the U.S. dollar for 1 to 2 years. This is what he does when the dollar is strong. He'll come out and say, oh, yeah, I don't like the dollar, but it's the best currency right now. That's the time. When he tells you he's in the dollar, it's going to collapse. It's exactly what happened because normally he trashes the dollar. And I actually made a call based upon Rogers. It's right. I knew it was time to short the dollar after Rogers made that call. That's correct. You want to make money and you're a dumbass, all you got to do is just do the opposite of what these contrarian indicator, broken clock comments say. That's it. Rogers shorting U.S. Treasuries. What is this? October 2008. Take note of that. Next short, July 2011, U.S. Treasuries, according to Jim Rogers. Commodities are hotter than ever. Note the date, 2011. Short U.S. government bonds right now, February 2013. Write these dates down. We're going to take a look at the chart here shortly. There you have it. He's shorting treasuries. What happens? Right? Commodities 2011. That's the peak. Great investment, he's telling you. Don't think so. And so this is interesting. Kitco, they post this on a video. They show his track record. What's his track record? Best-selling author of 4 books. That's his track record. There you go. That says it all. That says it all. Stupid books that are useless. Stupid, useless books. Okay? There you go. He tells you to buy commodities now. You all saw the chart. It's 2012, or you'll hate yourself later. I mean, folks, when you're constantly seeing somebody like Rogers every day who's positioned as this legendary investor, he's so great, and the media's telling you, everyone's telling you he's great, he's made all this money, and you're hearing him pitch the same narrative. Tell me you're not going to fall for it. Of course you're going to fall for it if you don't understand that everyone that pitched by the media as an expert is a contrarian indicator and a scammer, bullshit artist. They're lying to you. That's what you got to understand, and that proves it. I'm proving it here. I've proved it for years with many different scammers. Just go through the track record. And of course, his typical, worse than any bear market you've ever seen in your lifetime. He's talking about the U.S. stock market, of course. And no, there was no bear market, Jim. Sorry, you're wrong. Again, you can read this. Of course, this is with interview with conman, COVID climate change conman Chris Martenson, who promotes, is another source you can see if you want to spot a big army of con artists, contrarian indicators, and fraudsters. Go to Chris Martenson's channel. Go to Adam Taggart's channel. Right? There you have it, folks. There you have it. These people are all frauds. Folks, you got to wake up. You got to wake the fuck up. Now, if you're too lazy, you're too stupid, either or and, to do the research, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. All you got to do, I've already documented it on my site. That's all you got to do. It's right there. It's there. Once you understand the premise that I've been preaching for years, that I've proven irrefutably, and that premise is everybody promoted in the media as an expert constantly, they're there to pitch their horseshit, their broken clock narrative. They're not experts. The only expertise they have is in swindling people and conning people. Okay, we're talking about the media's talking head guys, the media's expert guys that come on there and tell you this or that. Oh, the dollar's going to collapse. Oh, the stock market's going to collapse. Oh, right. These are the guys that are scammers, that are broken clocks, and they are positioned as experts in order to create dumb money. Okay? You can go through the list. That's the reality. Anybody that's got media exposure is either not credible or isn't going to help you. 99.9% of the time, they're not credible. The 0.1% of the time where they're credible, they're not going to help you. And they're there to get free FaceTime. You're not going to hear a whole hell of a lot out of them. Okay? You understand? That's a reality. And then you look to ScamTube. Once again, take a look who Andrew Henderson has got on his channel. He's got some of the biggest con artists and idiots in the world. Now, Henderson doesn't normally feature people as a general practice. He wants to promote himself as some expert, but he does have many of these people on there versus someone like Chris Martenson, who constantly promotes scammers and idiots and disinfo. Many of these people do. You understand this? There's the kingpin promoters, the you could call it kind of aggregators. Aggregator is a term for the internet, kind of websites that aggregate. They bring together content, right? It's kind of a portal to bring together the content. And then you have the people who have their own original content, right? Henderson is kind of in between. He has his own scammy bullshit, and he also features other people that are not credible, like Patrick Boyle, Robert Kiyosaki, Patrick Bet-David, Ty Lopez, George Gammon, Doug Casey, Peter Schiff. The list goes on and on and on and on. You understand? That's how it works, folks. Patrick Bet-David does a similar thing. He features other people, but he also has his own content. He's not an aggregator, but to some degree he is. Because these guys, they want to share subscribers. You understand? So they're constantly bringing on similar swindlers because they know already, hey, they know they're a swindler, and they want to bring on other swindlers because they know that they've already got, those people have dummies. They've got sheep. They want to lure in their sheep. You understand how it works. You understand the lure. So you can imagine Andrew Henderson would love to reel in some of the subscribers of Robert Kiyosaki, because obviously if they've fallen for Robert Kiyosaki, then they're easy pickings, easy to fucking swindle. You understand? You got it? That's how it works. You see? That's why you keep seeing these same people interviewing the same people. It's a circle jerk. You understand? Follow the fucking trail. Follow the circle jerk. See where it leads you. Okay? You can start at the top of the circle jerk with Joe Rogan. Okay? And see where those people go. Patrick Bet-David's on there. Go to Patrick Bet-David's channel and see who's on there. You understand? You'll see Andrew Henderson on there. You're going to see all these guys. Follow the circle jerk. You see? That's the way it works, folks. It's pretty obvious. Legitimate people aren't on YouTube pitching their services. They're scammers. Every single one of them. Write it the fuck down. They're on YouTube because YouTube is the dumbest audience in the world. You understand? They want to go after the lowest hanging fruit because they're running scams. That's a fact. Credible businesses, credible people are not on YouTube pitching their shit. They're pitching their shit because they know it's the easiest conversion. You understand? That's why YouTube has now become this complete huge portal of horse shit and scams. That's why it's all now horse shit. Everyone's doing the same thing. All the big scammers are on ScamTube. You see that? I mean, I should be charging for this insight. But you see, people don't want to pay to help prevent loss. They don't see value in that. People want to pay for hope. They want to pay when you have fraudsters that tell you that they should expect to make 360% per year in their trading, like Felix and Friends does, right? You understand? That's what people want to pay for. And that's why, once again, folks, you can't be conned if you're not greedy. If you're greedy, you're going to be taken by these guys with their false claims and their bullshit. Okay? None of these people would ever confront me on a neutral platform. Guaranteed. They'll run like a scared you-know-what. Okay? Because they live off perception. They live off perception. They don't want to draw attention, any doubt. Who else is going to expose these fraudsters? Right? There's nothing out there but a bunch of fucking cowards and pussies. We need more people to do what I'm doing.